Hi, I'm Val. I'm Ketogenic Assistant at Matthew's Friends, and today I want to talk about using exchange lists and looking at product labels. Most people starting ketogenic diets will use exchange sheets to start with, and this gives you a good overview of where the different food products come from, which type of foods are carbohydrates, protein and fats. And we've got different products here. The exchange list. This is the carbohydrate exchange list, and what it does, it gives you the vegetables or fruit and sometimes some of the fats that may have a little bit of carbohydrate in them. And each of the vegetables and fruit come in 1 gram values. So you get 1 gram of carbohydrate in, say you have strawberries, you might get 17 grams for 1 gram of carbohydrate. But then if you have apple, if we look on the other side, you get 9 grams rather than 17. So it just depends on the carbohydrates what you choose. So you get less apple than you would strawberries for your amount in your prescription. So this is just a variety of carbohydrate products that you could use. These are not the amounts that are on the exchange sheet. So it just depends what you choose as to how high and how low in carbohydrate they are. And the thing is that if you want a bigger portion, you are going to be looking at the lower carbohydrate products, because when it comes to it, you've got to get quite a bit of fat in. And if you imagine if you've only got a tiny bit of parsnip or something like that, and then you've got to get a sauce or something like that, it's quite difficult. Whereas if you use some mushrooms, then you can use plenty of cream, that sort of thing, butter to cook them in, and things like that soak up the fat so well. So you can basically have what you want, but it's whether you can fit it into a meal. That's the thing. Here we have the proteins that we use generally. We can use things like cheese, meats, and we like to use the lean meats, egg, fish, any types of protein we can use. But again, we generally use 3 or 6 gram protein exchanges, and I think most centres use the same. But that's not like for like. It's the same as the carbohydrate. 6 grams of egg is about a whole egg, whereas it might be quite a small piece of meat. So it's just, again, you're going to use things that to what suits you. If you want a big meal, you might use eggs, or you might use a mix of cheese and mince. You might use whatever you want to, fish, but it will make a difference on the size of portion. So the more that you get used to cooking with the diet and you're more experienced, you will find out what gives you a bigger meal, basically. And you'll start off initially, you'll probably use basic, say 1 meat or 1 type of carbohydrate. But as you get more experience, you'll then start using different amounts, say a half gram of one vegetable and a gram of another, to make up your prescription. And that's when it's invaluable to have your piece of paper, your pen and your calculator, because you're going to need that to write down and make up your meal as you go along. So finally, we have our fat choices. Some of the fat choices like cream and mayonnaise do have a little bit of carbohydrate in them, and sometimes if you're just using a little amount, say of cream, say 5 or 10 mils, you probably wouldn't count the carbohydrate because it would be so small. However, if you're using say quite a bit and it's in a sauce or that kind of thing, you really do need to look at counting the amount of carbohydrate in the cream. And on the exchange list, it will tell you how much. I know at Matthew's Friends we normally say if it's 0.2, 0.3 of carbohydrate in something, we don't count it. But if it's over that, yes, you need to look at counting it. MCT oil, the coconut oil, is a slightly different kind of fat, and it does make ketones very easily, MCT oil, and it might be that when you start out, your dietitian may say to you, don't use MCT oil, don't use coconut oil to start with. See how you go with the other fats first. That's what we normally say. We normally start on a balanced sheet, and then if we need to make higher ketones, we might say try a bit of coconut oil. So it's up to your centre. Other things, cream cheese, another thing that will have a little bit of carbohydrate in it, and it also has obviously protein too, like the cheddar. So what happens on the exchange list is that it's a average. It's not set, because you will when you start, you'll think to yourself, well, hang on a minute, cheese has got fat and it's got protein, but this is an average. And for things like hard cheeses, we use them as a protein exchange because their prevalence is protein, but they do have some fat. So it might be that your dietitian will say, well, if you're using cheese all the time, maybe we need to count some of that fat, but start off with probably not. And the other thing with the cream cheese, it's mainly fat, but it does have protein. So on the exchange list, we will count that as a fat exchange, but it does have some carbohydrate, which we would count if you're using a lot, but we probably wouldn't count the protein. So it's just being aware that it's an average amount. And what I would say is, ask your dietitian if there is a product that you really, really want to use that whoever it is on the diet is going to really miss, then go to your dietitian and say, can you make me an exchange for this? Say if it was sausages, something like Black Farmers, I think they have about 1 gram of carbohydrate per 100 grams. So we can make you an exchange with that, but we might make it protein with fat. And that's what we generally do, is add to your basic exchange list as you go along on whatever you want. So this is going to be with your all times, your calculator for making up meals, and it probably seems very daunting when you first start, but believe me, once you get sorted, you will start knowing exactly how much carbohydrate is 17 grams of strawberries is 1 gram of carbohydrate, and you'll know all the different things by heart. So the things that you like and you use a lot, you'll soon get used to the amounts, so don't worry. So when you get started, once you've got all your products, you know what you want to put in your meal, you need to use a meal planner. This is the easiest way to do it to start with, is to fill in your foods and then your weights and write it all down, because it makes it so much easier. It helps your dietitian that you can take these meal plans into your dietitian. It shows her exactly what you're having. You can work out the amounts that are for your prescription, and once you've done this, that's your meal. You've done that meal, and if that meal works and it's you enjoy it, you've got that meal now. Put it in a folder. You can use that one again. You haven't got to work it all out again. That's done. So that's probably the easiest way to start with, and it means you haven't got to work all the maths out again as well. So food labels. In the UK, the most important thing is that we read our food labels always per 100 gram. And so we've got the easy option really. So we do have a formula that we can follow. You can get it from Matthew's Friends or from your dietitian, so that you can work out from a food label how much of whatever the product is 1 gram equals 1 gram of carbohydrate or however many grams of fat. So it's quite a simple formula to follow. And a good reason to be looking at the labels is that here you'll see per 100 grams values for fat, carbohydrate and protein. That's what we're looking for. And then you can have a product of coconut powder, which is in fact very different. When you look at the values on the coconut powder, the fat is much higher and the carbohydrate is much lower. So it just goes to show how it is very important to check, because you'll end up with a very different product. The other thing to look out for when you're looking at food labels is very often they will change. You need to keep an eye on what you're using. You can start off using one product and then the next time you go and buy the same product, exactly, for example with these, on one it's 9 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams, on the other it's changed the next time of shopping, it's 15 grams, and that's a huge difference if you're on a ketogenic diet. So it's well worth checking each time to make sure that your products, even that you know, are not changing. Many of these products, this is one that we use very regularly. Also, if you look on the food labels, you can get lots of different Linwood's flax, and we use them an awful lot. Mo loves cooking with them, but again, you can get different ones. You need to just check, because it may be that one has more carbohydrate than another, so it's worth checking. Some products we use, like the soya milk, it's got such a low amount of carbohydrate, it may be like the mushrooms, that your dietitian may say, okay, you can use that freely, but it might be, again, with a smaller child, that because it's got some protein in, that it may need to be counted. You just need to check with your dietitian. Another thing about product labels is when you, quite often people will go online and they'll find products. Now, one of those things to look out for is with some of the products that may be American based, and in America, that although we count per 100 grams, that some of their products may be per 100 grams, but they tend to leave the fibre content in the carbohydrate. All UK products take the fibre off the total carbohydrate. So we're always looking with the UK products, we're looking at total carbohydrate. If you use a product from the USA, you need to take the fibre off of the total carbohydrate to get the amount per 100 grams. One other thing that I might say about product labels is we very often get people sending in food labels, and that's things that they found online, and sometimes they can be something like per 30 gram serving, that kind of thing, and then that can get a bit complicated as to working out how much you have per gram. So in that case, there is a formula you can use. I personally have to look at it every time I do it, because I never remember it, but there is a formula, or you can go back to your dietitian, but always be careful, because it can get a little bit complicated then. So it's best to go back to your dietitian and find out and make sure you're making it the right amount. One more thing about food labels is sometimes when you go abroad, when you're traveling, you can find that the packaging may look exactly the same as it does here. And for one example that I found when I had my Greg on keto, he used to eat a lot of mayonnaise, and the mayonnaise here is about 80 grams of fat per 100 grams. In South Africa, it looked exactly the same jar, but it was, in fact, inside it was salad cream, and it was about 40 grams of fat per 100 grams. So very, very different. So it's just being aware, it's just looking out for things. And it sounds a bit scary, but honestly it's not. And if you've got your team behind you, all you need to do is ask. So now we've been through the exchange lists and the product labels. The next thing, when you're ready, you'll be moving on hopefully to try using EKM, which is the Electronic Ketogenic Manager. That's a computer program for making up meals, which makes life a lot easier. It's great to start with the exchange list. It gives you a really good knowledge of the food groups, but using EKM will make life a little bit easier as well.